if you would solely commit to say, here are the good activities, and whether that's working out, eating right, reading, meditating, having crucial conversations with your staff, and then I'm using this word intentionally, become a slave to those habits, that I cannot serve any other master but these habits that I've chosen for the results, and your life will undoubtedly change.
This is the Home Service Success Podcast, your resource for growing your residential contracting business through mindset development, sales, and marketing strategy. Stephen and I are back and super excited to introduce our guest today. His is a classic rags to riches story. He was homeless at the age of 16 and started in the trades, working as a literal ditch digger for a sewage company. Slowly, methodically grinding his way, he worked his way through the ranks and now sits at the top of the biggest, baddest coaching association in the industry. And Steve and I just learned this. He actually grew up around our stomping grounds in Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver. So allow me to introduce the one, the only, Julian Scadden, President and CEO of the Nexstar Network. Welcome, Julian.
Ooh, wow, brother. Thank you. That was awesome and all true. So thank you very much.
Dude, he got the name right. And I had no idea. Dude, I live in Southeast Aurora.
Oh, yeah.
I had no clue that you grew up here.
Yeah, when in the 90s we used to call it Saudi Aurora because that's when all the gang stuff was happening. It was getting crazy. So you know where Colfax and Moline is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very, so back in the day that used to be a 7-Eleven, now I know it's all the Mexican food trucks and all that. I lived in the apartments right behind that, bud. And I remember one of the stories about that 7-Eleven is when they went to it, 7-Eleven went out of business, a lot of robberies, a lot of drugs, a lot of stuff going on in that corner. But when they closed it out and it was going to become some other bodega type of thing, they found a body in the wall. So there had been a body there in the wall for who knows how long. So that's the neighborhood that I stomped around in and grew up in.
You didn't find anything when you were digging those trenches, did you?
No, thank goodness. The people who could afford to get their sewers redone were not usually the people putting bodies back there.
That's hilarious. I actually just 3 days ago heard the term Saudi Aurora. So it's not, I think it's a less common term than it once was.
Yeah.
5 years, almost 5.5 years. And that's the first time I've heard it.
Well, that was the time, that was the war that was going on. And like I said, that's when we had the gangs and there was all the shootouts and the summers of violence. And so, most of the people in Denver, they did know about 5 Points in the areas where the California gangs. So here's a little bit of history about Colorado. And just to give context to the story of the environment I was growing up in, there was and you can research this, there was a huge exodus out of California. Gang members were getting their drug charges and other assault charges, gang related charges dropped if they would just leave the state. They had so many pending charges. They said, if you will just leave the state, we'll drop these charges. And they went to Utah. They came to Denver. They went to Minneapolis. They went many places. And Denver was one of the places on the east side. And then a lot of Aurora people were wanting to say, this is our turf. We were originally here. And a lot of that violence broke out and spread through the city.
Wow. I did not know that.
Look at that. We're getting a little history lesson here.
And then we had the Chicago people come down too. The Four Corner Hustlers, the Vice Lords, the Disciples, and they came down. So we've got California coming in, we've got Chicago coming in, and we're just a bunch of guys who grew up there saying, time out, this is our turf. They thought it was going to be easy to just come in and take over shop, and it was a mess. It was not good.
It is funny. Man. I grew up outside of Chicago, and Chicago has its association with urban inner city crime, but I never associated that with Denver. And then when I first moved out here, it was like learning that there's a gang, a old time kind of gangster kind of thing going on one part of Denver. And then, slowly but surely learning the history of, what we're talking about now, whether it's Saudi Aurora or I'm like, man, Denver doesn't get, I guess it just doesn't get the credit for being an actual,
Well, it's not how we wanted to be known. It was very important that this was, because this is a destination. We've got Aspen, we've got Vail, we've got Breckenridge, we've got all these things, and you didn't want this distinction on the city. And if you simply just go past, and you all will know this being there now, if you go past 25 or out there towards Federal, we had all the Mexican gangs. We had all the drug trafficking coming in from the Mexicans over there. So, it's a hotbed. It was a central location right there, because you just quick ride down to New Mexico, Las Cruces, and then you're down there and you're picking up stuff at the border. it's a major port for drugs, and then that's what brought all the gangs.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well-
Yeah, my wife still, when we go, Colfax has changed a lot, at least, parts of it in the last 10 years. And my wife is funny. Like, we'll go, if we cross Colfax, she's like, scoots down in the car, like kind of laughs about it. I'm like, no, I think you're fine in this area. It's all, fancy little apartments now and redone and nice little restaurants. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're safe.
Yeah, those train yards that are now full of lofts. There's definitely some bodies down there, and I'm not saying I have anything to do with it, but I'm just saying, like, I go down there now, and it used to just be train yards, and now there's just all these lofts, and it's all super cool, and there's skate parks, and I go, oh my gosh, this used to be the craziest place in the world down here, with all the homeless and burnt out buildings, and now it's just, the world is a change, and yet many things remain the same, and I think it all gets back to mindset, which is why I'm grateful that you all have me here today. Is that no matter where you're at, no matter what period in time that you've been in, I think some things just ring true. And that's why I was so appreciative when you all asked me to just spend a little time with you here today about, okay, so now we've covered the framework of, one environment and some factors, but everybody's got a story.
That's right.
But it's all what's going on up here in the nugget.
Well, very nice job segueing that in. That was nice. I like that. So before we hit record, one of the things that we had just started to talk about was the fact that, and I'm making up these percentages, but you look at all of the, great coaching organizations out there, not just in the home service industry, but in the world. And you put in, you put in 100 people, and maybe 10% or 10 of those people have a really good result that you desire when they follow the process and stuff. And you got, 80 or 90% that aren't getting a result anywhere near that. And they're still stressing out, and they're still struggling, and they're looking around. And then it makes it even worse in their mind, because they're looking around at their friend that started at the same place as them, that's following supposedly the same process, and they're getting a crappy result. So now they're even further down on themselves. Now they get even a worse result. And so it's all, it all comes back to it all comes back to that thing in between your ears. Like, what is your mindset with that? And I don't even know exactly how to teach all of this stuff to everybody, especially people that aren't willing. But if you're not paying attention to your mindset and developing skills around self-awareness and, utilizing your emotions as a guidance system, and setting intentions for your day. How do you intend for your day to go from the very, very beginning? Of course, you're not going to get that result. And then it's going to be even harder once you get momentum going in the other way. It sucks, man. If one of my big things in life, like kind of one of my big whys of why I do a lot of the things that I do, is to inspire people to be inspired by themselves, right? Because too many people are looking to others to say, hey, you're doing a great job, right? Instead of this intrinsic inspiration that actually pushes them to desire to learn more and be open to learn more and have faith and confidence in themselves. Like, if I could just inject that into people, I would, because then everything else that they learn, then they can choose, like, go through Nexstar. Just great. Follow the process, have the right mindset. You're going to get the result. It is that simple, right?
I love the word inspire. It means in spirit, and to sort of have the spirit injected in you, whatever that is. And I think it's fair that we need to use care, in my opinion. What are you injecting? What are you inputting? Your inputs will affect and determine your outputs. So inspire, versus expire. Everybody knows what expire means. When somebody expired, the spirit left them. But to inspire, and on inputs and outputs, and I'm just hopping on a soapbox quick, just because you made me. I went down this path with that word. Is inspire. What are we putting in? How are you starting your day? Like you said, with intentionality. But what does that mean? It means your inputs, what are your sensories? The very first thing that I'm very fortunate that I get to do when I wake up, the very first thing I do, we're talking about, Stephen and I are early birds, kiss my wife. That's the very first sensory thing that I have. I traditionally normally wake up before my alarm. So I make sure that noise doesn't go off, but I kiss my wife. The first thing that I read, I choose to read a proverb a day. So I read a proverb a day. That's the first thing I put in. That's the first thing I listen. So I listen to it, then I read it, then I think about it, then I write. I don't open email. So these are all inputs. So when you said that word inspire, I also want to help people. In my opinion, I associate it to in spirit. What are you putting in? And most importantly, to start your day. So if you're going to inspire your day with somebody else's opinion of global events, that's your choice, meaning the news or the media or social platforms. I don't do it. I won't do it. The second thing that I want to speak to here is I'm privileged right now that we have a class going and it's called Operational Excellence. I know, what an original name. But for all the operational excellence classes that are out there, one of the things that I'll be fortunate to do, we have about 40 people over here in our training center in St. Paul today. And there's a portion where I get to introduce culture. But of the 3-day class, the first day really focuses on you, right to your point, Stephen, is it's called operational excellence. And many times we'll have people ask us about at lunchtime of day one, why the heck are we still talking about my why? And why are we talking about my beliefs? And so I'm going to share a little graphic here, and then I'm going to add a piece. But this is what I'll show the team. I'll go in there and I'll draw this. And it's what you're talking about. People join Nexstar or any group for the systems. I need a systematized business, turnkey business, right? That's what E-Myth, that's what everything has taught us. But Nexstar has specific tools, or whatever other group is going to have their tools. So you say, I joined for the systems. All of us have variation in the tools. And so that's supposed to be the distinction or the technology, so we have it online and we don't, and we call it this and we call it that. And so we fight for the distinction in the tool. But the truth is, the reason that Nexstar has a 95% retention rate of our members is because we believe that the foundation of what we're building here is your mindset. So if you don't start there, if we don't, and that's what I choose to explain to people in my portion this afternoon of the class. Yeah, you joined for the systems. I know you did. I know that's what you told our salesperson. I know that's what you told yourself. I know that's what you told your staff. We just need to get organized. If we just had processes, if I just had a software that could organize all this stuff for me, we'd be fine. And then here's the tools. Just show me how to use it. But right back at you, brother. It's the mindset. It's the inspiration. It's the collective wisdom of those that you choose to surround yourself with. Thank you for letting me soapbox on that. You got me excited on that one.
Yeah, man. I love it. And I have a feeling that this is, well, who knows what we're going to talk about today as this unfolds. But I think a lot of it's probably going to be around that type of stuff because it's so important. And it's interesting, like when you look at it, I don't know your background in kind of starting to figure out what I'll deem in this giant bubble of personal development, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily professional development, not things like E-Myth and systems, like the personal development world. And I mean, mine started, 15 years ago after I had started a mortgage company that failed and went under in 2008. And I was like, there's got to be something to this personal development stuff, right? Because I'm pretty smart. I kind of know what I'm doing, but yet I have other people around me that are like way less, let's say, book smart and school smart, that are like kind of crushing it. And they seem a lot happier. I was like, all right, so I'm going to just start reading some of this stuff. So after that started to happen, I had no money. I was in debt. I had no job. I had no income. And I had a lot of time. So I couldn't go do really much. So I just started waking up at like 4 a.m. and I would read for hours. And I was like, all right, let's start implementing this stuff. But nowhere in school or in my family life growing up did any of this stuff ever come up. And so for a lot of people, a lot of us, we didn't have that growing up. So we're having to find that a little bit later in life. And we already have so much programming in our mind from our parents, our grandparents, the way they were born, expectations and things around money, time, business, work hard, grind 7 days a week, all of that kind of stuff. Well, we've got to learn new processes and new things to think about and then implement them into new patterns. And the older we get, the more entrenched those previous patterns are. And so it's tough. That's why this stuff is hard, right? Like it seems so simple. It's like, all right, a general statement of, if you believe your thoughts become things, great. Well, just start changing your thoughts. Okay. Well, go through a day and try to do that. It's really challenging, right? And so in the older we get and the more ingrained those patterns are, the harder and harder it becomes. So it's tough, man. It's hard stuff, right? Like it's Davis, what's the thing I always say? It's what's simple isn't always easy, right? Because this is really simple.
Yeah.
Like if you could just inject people with your first statement, that first half day that you're talking about in operational excellence, talking about mindset, if they would just instill those new beliefs and believe them instantly and ingrain them, their life would change 180 degrees from that day moving forward. But it's hard, even though it's simple.
Simple, not easy. Simple, not easy. And then that's just like your business. It's simple. It really is simple. You know, conversion rate, average ticket, get the leads, keep the call board full. It's freaking simple, gang. But you know it ain't easy. All of you listening, you know, it's like,
Yeah,
I know it's not. What was, if I may, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. And
yeah.
if you don't recall, that's perfectly fine. But I have you know, there was a moment as you know, there was one book that everybody has, that one book. And so someone said, you need to read this book and it'll change your life. And I read and I go, oh, this reminds me of like 12 other books.
Yeah.
But it's like the first one that you had. Do you remember the first one you had that tipped it for you?
Yeah, the first book, I have it sitting right here in front of me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, I forget what people call it, but it's like where every sentence is highlighted, right? And every page is dog-eared because I've read it so many times and I was like, this sentence is good. This sentence is good. It was The Power of Focus by Jack Canfield.
Nice.
And my wife actually went and saw him at some event or got to meet him, and she took my book and got it signed.
Nice.
She was like, this is the first real book that my husband ever read. And then I'm going to throw this one out there because this is one of my favorites of all time, is U Squared by Price Pritchett.
Okay.
And it's, you know, you can read it in, I don't know, 45 minutes, but it's one of my favorite books. Anytime I'm feeling like super overwhelmed and I can't find an answer to something, I just go open that little, it's almost like a pamphlet. And I just flip to a page and I'm like, great, got it. There's my answer.
Beautiful. Thank you. I was, I'm current president CEO of Nexstar Network, which means that I'm an employee, which means, and we're member owned. So that means I report to all, you know, I'm really, you know, I think you said something like I sit at the top of the biggest, baddest, and I love the biggest, baddest. That's pretty cool. So thank you for that. But I really don't sit at the top. I sit in the middle because we are member owned. Each one of our members has an individual share of ownership, and I report to a board of directors. So I really sit in a sweet seat of in the middle. Reason I bring that up though is I was a former member. I actually ran a shop out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I was a Nexstar member. And I went to one of our super meetings at the time as a member, and one of the keynotes was Jack Canfield. And as serendipitous as I think this will be, and it coincides, the first book, the book that changed my life, was The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, because it's a workbook and he gives you something to do at the end. Because I'm sure in the past I had Zig Ziglar and like Les Brown. I listened to a lot of Les Brown, but it was that book, The Success Principles, and then having to do the work at the end of each chapter. And if you did the exercise, and that was the one that launched it for me. So I'm always interested in the one that launched it for others.
Dude, that's crazy. I've been through Success Principles too. Because after I read that one, I was like, Jack Canfield, who is this guy?
Let's go.
You know, he used to have all the old audios. Like, I don't know if you remember those or not, but then I think, didn't the Success Principles or one of them even had like CDs with it?
Yes, you could get this big plastic thing.
Yeah.
You pop it open.
I have that thing somewhere.
I've gifted that
the other day.
I've gifted that. I've gifted the book. And then the other one of his that truly changed my life, and this is a great thing for self-development, introspection, is The Aladdin Factor. You know, him and Mark Victor Hansen, the guy that did the Chicken Soup series, but The Aladdin Factor. And it's just, you know, the reasons we don't ask and why we don't ask, but it ties back all to belief.
Julian, when did you actually get into this?
Look, you talked about the homeless stage, and I throw out homeless out there to be a little bit of an ear grabber. The truth is that I lived in the back of a 1968 Dodge Monaco. So I was very fortunate, you know, to be real with you. I wasn't truly homeless. I had that truck. I mean, it's this giant car, 4-door. And so if you want to look up 1968 Dodge Monaco, and you're going to realize that back seat is basically a couch. So even though, you know, you hear the term couch rider or couch hopping or things like that, I have my own couch. So I was special that way. I picked up this car for maybe $500. I had spray painted the rusty roof. And one day I went to go in. No, I made a hard left turn. The car cut out, and I kind of roll into the gas station, and I have the hood open, and I'm looking at it, and some guy, you know, older gentleman comes over, and I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm just doing what I say other people do. You pop the hood and you just kind of stand there and it's going to fix itself. And I'm just, and the guy, he goes, okay. And he jumps in and he kind of just starts jumping and kicking my damn engine. I'm like, what are you doing? Hey, get out of here. You know, I think he's a crackhead. He's like, hey, calm down. And he's like, do you see those chains, like a giant metal steel chain, like that you would lock up a yard with, is around my motor? And I didn't even notice. I was like, yeah. He's like, you don't have motor mounts. He's like, that's what's holding your motor in place. He's like, what whatever you did, your motor shifted. He's like, so you just got to reline it and line it up there. My point is that at this stage of my life, 16, no driver's license, driving around in this thing, this is my home. The trunk is my closet. I'm listening to Les Brown though, and I'm listening to Les Brown. And that was the first seed of his motivation of me saying things could be different. This is the age where I was bulletproof. Nothing could happen to me. And my friends were starting to get little stints in jail. And some of my friends started getting killed. And some of my cousins went away to college. They started going away to school. And I started to see this real divide between all of us that grew up together. But the change came years later in my 20s. Now, fast forward, I always worked a job, but I always lived in the hood. And, at the time, raising my son home alone, we had a home invasion. Some guys walk in with some guns, stick us up. They wanted to rob us. They thought we had something. And it was that moment with a gun in my face, gun in my son's face, the pending threat of death, because then they left and they weren't masked. So I knew who they were, and they were looking for some of my buddies, and it turned into a whole web in one moment. And I recall that there was a moment where after that event, basically where I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I realize that somebody's going to die. It's either going to be me or I'm going to have to kill somebody, because they're either going to come back for me or my buddies are going to go looking for them. And somehow I'm dead center in the middle of it. And I decided I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to be part of this. I'm just going to say right here on the podcast, I'm not a killer. Like, I can be aggressive, I could be mean, but I'm not a killer. I found out, gang, in the crucible, when the moment came down to it, and I knew that I would either have to go kill somebody to stay alive. And fortunately, I had the option. I said, I'm not a killer. I don't want to be part of this. I grew up around it, but I didn't want to be part of it. So I chose to leave my home of Colorado and relocated to New York. But when I went to New York, and I had family there, I grew up between Aurora and Brooklyn, so I had a lot of family there. But then that's when I connected with another business owner in Atlanta, and I said, you know what, I need somewhere to raise my son. I didn't want to raise him in Brooklyn. So I started looking at other places. That's why I chose Atlanta. And when I get down there, I didn't have anything. I had to live in this man's guest bedroom, the business owner who I said, let me start a residential department in your business and let me get a cut of it. I just needed a fresh start. And I promise you, we can make a lot of money. And I'm living in his guest bedroom. I'm saving enough money to get an apartment to bring my son out. And I just have nothing but time on my hands. And I told the guy with the business, I said, we have to be Nexstar members though, if we're going to do this thing right. And he had already met Nexstar a year previously, and, he'd been considering it, and he said, yeah, let's do it. Then we go to that event, and I get the Jack Canfield book. And that's what was going on in my life at that time. No friends, no family, no extracurricular activities. So to your point, Stephen, I had nothing to do but to read for hours. So between that, Wayne Dyer and Les Brown, they were a little bit of the motivational, good food, but Jack was giving me the steps. That Jack Canfield stuff was giving me the steps. And meanwhile, speaking of a Jack, Nexstar's first employee, first CEO, my predecessor, Jack Tester, was my business coach. So I'm getting business education on this business from across the nation, from my business coach, from a CEO, from a seasoned professional who is investing in me. I've got Jack Canfield in my other ear talking about, self-development and ownership and accountability and responsibility and all of those things, and nothing but time on my hand, but to change my life. And that's exactly what happened in that period. Long story to a short question. So thank you.
I think that there's a couple of interesting things that I pull out of that. One is, a lot of us can kind of name this little pivotal thing that happened, right? Or some sort of pivotal part in our life. And maybe it happens once, maybe it happens twice. And it's interesting. I've heard people even say like, oh, well, if I had something like that happen to me, then I would change. Mm-hmm. And it's, like you're talking about somebody that's got a gun in your face. And it's funny to watch other people sometimes say, oh, well, if that had happened to me, then I would be a different person. I would have been more willing to change. And I'm like, trust me, you don't wish that.
Yeah, don't wait. Don't let that be the reason. Don't wait for that.
Yeah,
do it now.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting, right? Because it actually is, I think this is the right way to say this. It is, for the most part, harder to change when things are comfortable.
Yes.
Right? When you don't have anything really bad, nothing's really great. It's a lot harder to change. Like when you have freedom of choice, it can become a lot more challenging to change. And I've noticed that as, I spent the last 2 years or 15, 18 months getting out of the day-to-day at Wit Digital, right? I mean, Davis will tell you, like, I have a very small role at the company. And uh, I've, I learned over like the last year when I had a lot of time, like I was actually sometimes more stressed when I had more time because I had complete freedom to choose what I wanted. And I was always afraid, like, man, what if I choose wrong? Oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be doing this. And so the last year was a really interesting personal development journey for me. And I'm a huge meditation fan. I mean, I pretty consistently, I don't know, 360, 355 days a year, I hit anywhere between about 45 to 75 minutes a day in the morning.
I want to jump on
Big,
something. I want to jump
yeah,
on
go
something
for
you
it.
said there because I think this is critical to the audience that you all capture in business leaders and owners specifically. Uh, Jack Tester gave me this advice once, and it was as so the building that the business that he was coaching me on, we were in the startup stage. We had no residential business. We started within 4 years, we got it up to 8 million. So each year, that's just growing, that's just hustling, that's just getting after it. I did not stay with that business long enough to see the next level, meaning the next level where you have to create a leadership team, the next level where you have to start to let things go. So fast forward, now I'm here at Nexstar, started as a coach, went to a trainer, then the VP of operations here, and Jack had us growing at an accelerated rate, and we still are today, thankfully, to our members. But I remember this. As I was interviewing and applying for the CEO role, he said, Julian, I really want you to consider the distinction as you move into this next role. He said, because operations, and hear this with the right ears, operations is pretty easy because it's always coming at you. Everything, like every day. And as soon as he said it, it made sense. Like, yeah, I know I've got, 12 direct reports, and I don't have time to be strategic and think. And that's part of the reason why I was excited about moving into another role where I could develop, some of my strength finders are strategic. And I do have very long-term thoughts, and I didn't always make time for that, or the position I was in didn't always create time for that. But he said that, and I thought about that, and now I get to watch the operator that we have in place, and everything that just comes at her constantly it comes at you. But what do you do as a business owner or leader? And now, just talking to your listeners here, because Stephen just framed this up. Who is doing that introspective look? Who's being honest with themselves? Because here's what I'm going to tell you, what I see in our members and in other people. They get that free time, they start to delegate, and then they start to meddle. So either they start to look at a new vertical to add, or now we can do this, and they start to actually shake the bus because they don't know what to do with this energy, or they have this entrepreneurial spirit. I have to go start a new business, or I have to do this and that. You don't know what to do with all that free time, and all the free time that you start to create as your business grows. You create a leadership team, you start to delegate, because that's the only way the business is truly going to grow. That's the right thing. But boy, you touched on a real hot button subject there that I think your listeners really need to dig into. What are you doing with that free time? Are you being a menace? Are you being additive? What are you bringing to the business? Do you need to get out of the way? Oh my gosh, that one right there is heavy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and so I've had people approach me and ask for help, right? Like other business owners. And I coach like 2 companies at a time, just purely for fun, because I love doing it. And that's one of the biggest things that I talk to people about. Like I have people call and they're like, well, I'm out of the business, right? I had this guy, he runs, it's about a $5 million home service company. And he goes, I'm out of the business, but I'm stressed and I don't know what to do. And I'm causing more problems than I'm solving.
Yep.
Right. And so I was like, all right, well, you're out of the business. How many days are you going into the office? He's like, well, I'm down to 4.5. I was like, hold on. So you're telling me that you told your team that you want to be completely out of the business, because his goal was completely out of the business, right?
Yeah.
Now, I didn't need to define that too much because he's so far away from it. We just needed to have a conversation about the next step towards whatever that vision is that he had.
Right.
And I was like, dude, you got to be out of the office at least 3 days a week. He's like, but everything's going to fall apart. I was like, it's actually going to get better.
There you
go.
Like
you already have a great leadership team. He already had all that stuff in place. I was like, this is a you problem. This is only a you problem. Like you need to get out of the office. And we talked through like some guilt, right? Like a lot of owners we're used to driving. We get our value. We feel like our value comes from pushing harder than anybody else. So we have to find a new way to be validated as a leader or as an owner, right? So we have to do this next level of self-reflection and figure out, great, what value do I really have to add? Because a lot of times we have value about like vision and being able to see big picture and what's going on in the industry, better serving the community, whatever that is.
Right.
But you've got to pay attention to those things. We've got to find a new place to get intrinsic value from, so that we don't feel guilty. And we're not, like you said, that's the biggest issue, is going back in and meddling. And I did it plenty. And my CEO will probably tell you, like, some days she's like, what are you doing? Like, get out of here.
Yep.
Like, get out of my face. Like, but we've built a relationship over, 7 years to where she can tell me, like, hey, you're doing something here that's not helpful at all. Like, go away.
Well, you mentioned it. You use the word value, and I want to share the same sentiment with a different word. Is that I believe that there's a core human need of significance.
Mm.
And when your value or your identity is tied to the business, then where do you feel significant? Where do you feel that your impact is made? So value is a great word. And I want to connect that with significance too, because if you don't feel significant, if you don't feel like you're making an impact in other places, then it's a human trait. So that's why I want to give these people grace too that are doing this. Yeah, you are fighting quite literally, physically and mentally, internally, when I say physically. And I don't know, here, let's get tricky. Let's get sticky here. Because I'm fortunate enough to have, over 800 case studies in the Nexstar membership. When I say that, I just mean 800 different companies that we get to view and look at. An absentee owner, and I'm using that term intentionally. Okay, I'm not saying an elevated, delegated executive presence. I'm saying an absentee owner. And at 5 million, I still think that your company is carrying your behaviors. I don't know how well you can really check out at 5 million in my experience in the home services industry. And if you want to, then you should probably just step aside and get all the way out of the way. So this is my opinions. But what I want to say is, with an absentee owner, so it all ties back to meddling, but people see that. People see everything you do. And especially at a number like 5 million, it's like, you're not gone. If it's 100 million and you're popping in a couple of times, nobody notices because nobody even knows who the heck you are. But to be an absentee owner is I think it's potentially critically crippling to the ability of the development of your leadership team. And you said they had a great leadership team, but I watch these people and they want to, only come around sometimes and only have to check in, or it would fall apart without me. But I love what you said. It's a you problem, because there's so much more danger in being an absentee owner, because here's what it looks like. Here's what I'm getting to. Here's what it looks like to everybody else. You're just doing what you want to do. You don't look fully committed. You don't look like you're in, and it looks like you've got a nice car, you've got a nice home. Everybody knows you've got it. So you don't look committed. So to you, you're saying, I want to empower other people. I want to step away and give people more. But what it looks like you are just enabled to do whatever you want, certain entitlements. And there's something that I strongly believe, and people can disagree with me all they want, but again, my beliefs come from experience, and I'm willing to change them with different perspectives. But my experience tells me that all relationships are based on trust and presence. And if I lose one or the other, then the relationship starts to deteriorate. And then the fuel of a relationship is a conversation. But when it starts to appear that you have privileges that others do not, and you're not the model, we talk about waking up at 4 a.m. and we talk about being the first one in, last one out. You hear those things with sports teams, and it just appears that you're not committed when you behave in such a way. And I would just invite people to think about that. And you could be mad. And if it's burning you a little bit, that's good. I want you to think about why that's burning and look at why it's burning, instead of just saying, oh, this little trench digger from Aurora, what does he know? More just focus on yourself and say, why does that burn? Because the appearance is that you're not committed. And my question is to you, are you more committed to yourself and what you want in life, or are you to the business? And if you truly are, you've got people like Steven, you've got coaches across this industry that will jump in and help you, not just Nexstar. Truly look at that, uncover it, unpack it, and do the right thing.
Dude, I love that. I love the committed piece, because it's so spot on when it comes to that. And I think, like, this cycle that I've seen with people like that, you mentioned like the $5 million mark. Like, I agree with you. That's just not quite there to have the type of leadership it needs and the type of vision to be a completely out of the business. And this cyclical thing is, you take a step back, and then you learn a little bit more about you personally. Like, okay, what do I really love and what do I not love? Like, over the last year, I learned a lot of pieces about what do I really love, and what am I great at, and what am I passionate about? And then what did I really hate? Like, what pieces did I feel trapped by the business that sucked energy out of me? So I got to take a little step back and get some more clarity on that. So now in the next kind of wave, I get to go back in a little bit in these areas that I really have the most ability to impact the business and the people. And yet I can get rid of these other little things that used to take energy away. And I think it's always, everything is always moving in a rhythm, right? Nothing just goes straight up, nothing goes straight down. Like, everything is always in a rhythm, and we're always constantly learning. And I mean, we talked a lot about growth mindset. That ties in there, right? Like, and you just mentioned something. You're willing to change your beliefs, or I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you're willing to change your beliefs. And I think that that's so important, because we have to always be willing to learn, and we have to be open to questioning things, and we have to be open to our stuff being questioned all the time, because that's how we learn and we grow and we become better, and we learn how to get more fulfillment. We learn how to have more impact. Hell, we learn how to have more fun, right? Like, geez, man, I wish coaches and stuff would talk more about the importance of fun and fulfillment in life. Because especially right now, I mean, look in the home service industry, right? I mean, you got all these Facebook groups and you got all this stuff, and it's kind of like people are modeling after, oh man, I want to hit 20 million, or I want to hit 30 million.
Right.
But what they're not seeing is like this kind of behind the scenes thing. Like, you've got to be getting fulfillment from what it is you do. Because when you get to 20, if you're doing it without any sort of fulfillment and without any sort of fun, you're going to be just as miserable, even though the company's at 20. And then you're going to think, oh, well, maybe I got to be at 30. Maybe I got to be at 50. Maybe I got to be whatever, like the horizon size. And then I got to sell, and then I got to grow this, and then I got to be the first billion. Like, you'll never be happy, right? Like, take the time now to find fun and fulfillment in what you do. Don't wait for some future thing.
I love that. I want to circle back on two things. Number one is something that you said that inspired this thought for me, and hopefully will create more clarification when I talk about an absentee owner. The difference between absence and empowerment. And I think what's happening, or what could tend to happen, is people are saying, I need to be away so that others can do things, and that's your way of empowering. But one of the beautiful things that I witnessed firsthand here at Nexstar was the impression that our founder, Frank Blau, placed on Jack Tester. So I'm able to follow a model Jack Tester. Jack Tester was here every day at the same time, no matter what. Even when I took over as VP, even when I'm handling the bulk of the issues, he was here. And there would be times where he would start to say, hey, Jay, give me something to do. We started to broaden the org chart. And we started to add more people. And, that also gets back to the idle mind thing that we talked about earlier. But you still need, and this is what I was saying about what are you modeling, and it shows a lack of commitment. I never questioned Jack's commitment. And he saw that from Frank Blau, the founder. He talked about, he never saw anybody more committed, more passionate, but was always there on time, always was the first one to call him, always. And so that's the difference, gang. So I think what you're fighting for here at the 5 million is, I think you're fighting to empower your team, and you want to show them, and you want to step away to show them that you trust them. But what you're doing is you're showing them that you're not there. So you need to be there. You need to be consistent. You need to be committed, and just focus more on the empowerment piece instead of the absence piece. The absence is not empowering. It's confusing. The second thing that you triggered for me is I'm ignorant. When I said that I'm willing to learn, when we hire a new staff person, one of the first conversations I give them when I sit down with them is I say, I am ignorant. And here's what I mean by that. This is my definition. I don't know if it's Webster's shared definition. But when I say I'm ignorant, it simply means that I have lack of information or knowledge in certain areas. And as a responsibility and non-negotiable of being an employee here at Nexstar, is that if you hear or see me do something that's incongruent with our guiding principles, or what you believe the culture is here, or how you would like to see the president and CEO behave, it's a non-negotiable. It's your responsibility. You must call me on it. And if you're uncomfortable calling me on it, go to the VP, go to HR, go to somebody who can give me the information or the knowledge, because you don't have the right to keep me ignorant. And you don't have the right to gossip about my ignorance to others, because that will deteriorate the culture here. Here's the thing you can't do. You can't go sideways with it. You don't go to your cube mate and say, do you hear what Julian said in the staff meeting? He's such an idiot. Doesn't he know that that word is offensive? No, I don't, because I'm ignorant. And until you come and tell me, the origins of it and why it hit you that way and what I should reconsider, then you're at fault for letting me to continue to walk around here ignorant. And you know what? You could just quit. If you don't care that much about our organization, you should leave. You should get out of here. And this is how I talk to people. This is why we want people to meet me in the recruiting process so they can see what they're getting into here. And they go, the culture here is so great. And I go, yeah, it is. I know. And we have the most difficult conversations of anywhere you've ever worked. Why do people talk about the staff at Nexstar and the way they do and the coaches and the trainers? It's because we do the heavy lifting behind the scenes too. It's all love fest and it's like family. And I tell people right away when we recruit them in when they're started, we're not a family. You're going to hear a lot of people here in the recruiting process tell you that we're like a family. I'm here to tell you we're not. We're a team because we will cut you. I have alcoholics and drug addicts in my family, and I won't tolerate that here at Nexstar. So we're not a family. I don't have a choice in family. I have a choice in team. You have to be a high performer, and we want to give you tools, and we want to give you the gym and the facility and trainers and things to help you become and perform better. But if you aren't performing in your position, you will be gone. So we're a team. But those type of conversations and people calling each other out on their ignorance, respectfully, directly, in private, it's not to humiliate, it's to educate. And you can say anything to me that you want if the intent is to educate. I had a very honest phone call with we were seeking somebody as a potential vendor, and the experience was not good from their perspective. From what I heard, whether it's true or not, their perception of the perspective of the vetting process hurt to hear. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that phone call, that they told me all the things that made me so nauseous. It's like, oh, that happened. Oh, that happened. And again, was it exactly the way they said it? Probably not. But it's exactly how they experienced it. And that's what matters. So I got all over the road on that one just to say that for those of you that anything I've said here that might have thrown you off and you don't agree with it, and I say I'm willing to change my stance. If there's something that you can enlighten me with or share with me, because I only speak from experience, but I am open to expanding my knowledge base. So thanks for letting me riff on that one.
I love that, man. I absolutely love it. And I pulled two things out of that. And you didn't exactly say this, but this is what resonates with me is a lot of people think that they want to be this absentee owner, right? They want to build a business that just runs on its own and then it just prints money and then they can go do whatever they want.
And we taught that for years. Our industry said, run a turnkey business that you can step away and you just go fish. We taught that. Yeah. A lot of us did for years.
Well, I wrote this down. Absence isn't actually that much fun. Because being alone in the world is not as much good. It's way more fun to do things with people. Right? Like we love to stretch and grow. And if you're just off fishing 7 days a week and maybe hanging out with your family, you're going to be miserable pretty soon.
And how strong is your family? I love that you did that. How strong? Have you built up enough relationship with your wife and kids that you can be gone 3 days out of 7? Your business is the exact damn same, that every relationship is based on trust and presence. Oh, it's good now. I've got 20 years in with the wife, so I only need to see her 4 days a week. Thank you. I had to jump in there though.
Oh, I love that, man. I love it. And yeah, it's just, I remind myself all the time that the world is way more fun with other people.
Yeah.
Right. And I just, I go in waves, just like everything. Some days I'm like, oh man, come on, get me away from everybody. I just need to think.
Yeah.
But over the long haul, life is always more fun with other people. And then the second thing you mentioned was intent. And Davis hears me talk about this all the time, the power of intention, right? So I always think about this when I'm about to have a conversation with somebody or go into a phone call or go into a meeting or whatever it is. I take a second and I think about what is my true intention here? Because sometimes when things get, let's say, heated, right? Like, let's say there's something in the business that is a stressful situation that we have to deal with, or somebody did something wrong. The best of us, myself included, can go into that accidentally having the intent of, I'm going to prove to you that I am right and you did something wrong.
Yeah.
But as I get better and better at this, I go into it and say, okay, wait, what's my real intention here? My real intention is to protect and grow this business and the people within it, so that it becomes something amazing and continues to be the best of what we do, or the best business like this in the industry. So when I shift that intention, now I go in and have a different conversation that's way more in alignment with this bigger intention of the business and relationships and all of that, and the conversation will always go better. But I catch myself all the time sometimes thinking like, man, I'm just going to go in and prove that I am right and I know the right answer.
Yeah.
And that intention never ends well. So I love that you said that, the intent of which those people are coming to you to give you that feedback.
What I heard in that too is great for people to kind of park here and think about as well. your what I heard in there was your action on your intent shifted. What if I went in with curiosity to learn and discover in the conversation versus to be correct? And the truth is that either way, your intent is that you want to have a great business, you want to have a world-class business, you want to have the best business, whatever words we want to use, that's it's still your intent. Your intent is the same. What are the actions and then the mindset that you go into the conversation with? Because something for all of us to remember, and honestly, I just took a note for myself for a conversation that I'm about to have later today, is we judge ourselves and our intent, meaning that I only had this conversation with you because I want to have the best business. We judge ourselves and our intent, but others judge us by our actions. And so others say, I don't give a damn what his intent was. He came in here and called me dumb. It doesn't matter that your intent was to make the business better. Your actions showed that you minimized them. So your intention actually no longer matters. And that's what I loved about what I heard and what you were saying is your intent is the same to have the best business, but your actions shifted. And so the intention of being correct and then proving it, you shifted away from that, and your actions therefore shifted away from it versus let me go in a discovery mindset. Let me go in with a curious mindset. Let me go in asking questions. Let me go in to be educated. Because here's the thing. If the person is really a bad egg, a bad apple, whatever you want to call it, you can fire their butt in a second. Remember that. You guys hold the trump card. Okay. You can always fire them. You can let them go. So you don't need to go in with that intention in mind in the beginning. That's another one of the great lessons that Jack Tester gave me when I was running a business, is I was going into a difficult conversation and they had worked with us for a long time. And he said, first thing he said is, well, how are you going to honor somebody? You understand if you have to let them go, but how are you going to honor them? That's the first thing to think about if that's the outcome. He said, but you don't have to go into this conversation predetermined that you're going to let them go. He said, why don't you have the conversation and see what they'll commit to? And based on their response, then you have the choice. Don't go in preset on the outcome. Go in knowing that you've got options. And it was such a beautiful moment that I did go into a conversation with a longtime employee. The more that I learned, their perspective was skewed. I mean, it was off. It was unhealthy. It was bad, to the point where if I had just focused on that, I would have fired them in that moment. But then the question was, okay, I see your perception. I understand where you were activating from. Here's our perception and how we want things to be around here. Here's how this came across. Here's the wake that it created through the organization. What would you do differently, or what would you commit to doing differently with the perspective I just shared with you? And they made a commitment to some shifts. There was no need to fire the person at that time. Now I only need to monitor their commitment to the shifts that they said they would. And if they didn't, then down the line, again, we could revisit it and they could be removed. But it was much more of an intention of knowing that I didn't have all the information and giving people the opportunity to improve over time.
I love that, man. I always think curiosity, like the word curiosity is like my instant reframe. In moments like that, it's just be curious.
That's good.
I don't know all the answers. I mean, our perception as a person, we see 3% or 5% of what's really happening all around us at all times. Like anybody that thinks, oh yeah, like I fully understand that entire situation, you don't even know how little you actually understand to be able to say that. So just approach stuff with curiosity, man. Like I don't know, this whole life is supposed to be fun, right? It's not supposed to be this daily grind and stressful. Like it's supposed to be fun.
Well, I think there's both. And I think just to what you said earlier too about there's the other side of the owner who wants to step away and let it run itself, and then there's the other person who feels like they can't step away and they wear themselves out. To me, it's a little bit of, so this is my belief in life, is I always believe it's a little bit of both. You need the sweet to know the sour. You need the joy to know the pain. And you need a alone time to recharge, so know when to step away too, owners. I'm not saying you got to, when I talk about commitment, I'm not saying, to the self-detrimental, the self-sacrifice on the altar of commitment to your business. I'm not saying that either. I believe in unbalanced balance, because I want to be heard clearly here. I'm not saying I believe in a work-life balance. I don't. As I, pursued getting that business started, there were some long days, and then we hit a certain threshold, and my hours kind of leveled out. There were some times here in now stepping into this CEO role where I'm unbalanced. I'm putting in more hours and more time, and I do expect and plan the outcome that will level out. So stop fighting for, I gave my 8, now I expect my 8. And it's like, well, what do you want? If that's what you want, that's fine. We can be a transactional employer. That's cool. You could be a commodity and you'll be treated as such. But when you give that discretionary extra effort and you do certain things without being tied to the outcome, just know that if you're in a good business, if you're in a healthy business, you're being noticed. There are many things I did here without seeking an outcome, but it was always in any business I worked in that was a good, healthy business. When I gave extra, that's just the way I'm built, then a promotion would come or an extra something would come. But I never asked for it. I never did it for that. But I always, put faith first. There's a saying that I love, commitment before clarity. And I even said that in a staff meeting recently, and some of our staff reacted to that. They said, "Oh, do you want us to trust you blindly?" Oh, no, 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 no. Let's be careful here. I'm not saying that I'm the savior and just trust me. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I can't be challenged. But I am saying that results in life come with commitment before clarity. And there's a lot of times, and Stephen, I know you're going to be aware of this because of how well read you are, we get tied up figuring out the how. Many times our dreams and goals get stopped because we go, well, how am I going to do that? How am I going to create the best digital agency in the world? How am I going to create the best marketing? How? And you don't think about that. You say, who do I know that's really good at it? Who do, what would somebody do? You just frame questions differently in your mind. And again, I'm great at tangents. So thank you for letting me run off in a few directions on you here.
I love that, man. My buddy says, when you know why, your how will get legs.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget who said pursuing anyhow, you can endure it anyhow if your why is strong enough. And when we talk about that in class, I use the example of Nelson Mandela, that his why was so compelling that he could endure any circumstance because his why was that compelling. And are you that compelled in your business? And let's just take a moment here as this beautiful podcast that you all have out here that invites people to create that distinction between what is egotistical and self-serving, because we can wrap anything that we do in virtue. Even me, even the strong stances I'm taking, I'm wrapping them in virtue. Like, hey, I'm giving you guys gems. The truth is, honestly, egotistically, it's like, hey, I've had a little success and I want to share it on this podcast. That is the flippin' truth. And I invite all of us to do that sometimes and just step back and say, okay, how much of this is egotistical, self-centered, and I'm just wrapping it in virtue? Hey, I'm just doing this because I love you. I'm just doing this because I want the best company. And sometimes step back and go, oh, wait a minute. No, I did that because I wanted to be right. Or I did that because I was being, self-righteous. Just investigate that periodically. It's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my coaches always says, just own your desires, right? Like it's okay to desire validation,
I like
right?
that.
Just don't require it, but it's okay to desire it. It feels good, man. How good does it feel, when somebody comes to you and says, Julian, based on everything you've taught me and everything that I've heard from Nexstar or you specifically, I've tripled my business. My family life is happier and healthier. Like, hell yeah, that feels good, man. And just own the desire that it feels good. It's just don't ever require it.
And requirement can be attached to something that we talked about earlier, your significance or your value. Yeah. I think that I see that when you start to require it and then I don't get it and then I'm less than, it's like, it's, the old relationship thing. Well, you should know what I'm thinking, or I only want you to go. I want you to go. I don't want to have to ask you. I want you to want to go. And it's like, just freaking ask for what you want.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. How much energy gets wasted in those circular conversations of, that's a whole, that alone is a whole podcast.
I knew I opened up one there.
People. Yeah. Like, so I don't even think I can see, I'm looking at time. So we're rocking pretty well. So I don't know, Davis, I'm going to actually pause and say, what do we want to do at this point? I mean, I know we're pretty far over. Is there anything else that you wanted to have us chat about?
To actually be able to sit back and listen to you two just riff on this and go back and forth. And let me just say, I think fundamentally what I'm pulling from this as I listen to you guys is really constantly questioning your habits and building momentum in the direction that you want to go. Whether that's, committing to certain goals within your business, committing to certain goals within your life. It all comes down to really being aware and then questioning, am I serving myself? Am I serving my goals? And it's just, I don't know, it's been really fascinating just to listen to you guys based on, your successes, but also your, the starting points of, failure, essentially. And it's like, you've had to learn a lot of this the hard way. And I'm so grateful to have the benefit to just kind of sit back and listen to you guys, and your wisdom and pull some of this out. So
I love the word habits.
Man,
Quickly, David. So I want to say I love the word habits, and because they do run our life. And if you would commit yourself to good actions and become a slave to those habits. So if I commit to the good actions and then I became a slave to them habitually, you will only get the results. You will only get those outcomes. I think the book is Switch that makes the analogy that your emotions are the elephant and your logic is a rider, a human riding an elephant. And this is why habits and discipline are critical to maintaining that momentum, that of which you spoke. But if you would solely commit to say, here are the good activities, and whether that's working out, eating right, reading, meditating, having crucial conversations with your staff, and then I'm using this word intentionally, become a slave to those habits, that I cannot serve any other master but these habits that I've chosen for the results, and your life will undoubtedly change.
Love
Because
that, man.
you're serving some habits right now.
Oh,
You're the slave to something right now anyway. You don't want to say it. We don't like that word, but you are. You're serving a master right now. Is it McDonald's? Is it your own self-pity? You're serving something right now.
yeah. I love habits are just are so amazing. I love that you brought that up. I have a saying that I don't know if I created or I pulled it from somewhere, but it's accidental habits, right? And so when you take a step back, I use wine as a great example. Like every once in a while, I'll like wake up in the middle of an afternoon and realize like, wait, I've been drinking a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine every day for the last month. And our body and our mind is always creating things. It's turning things into habits, right? Because that's how our brain works.
Mm-hmm.
It wants to make our life easier. So take a step back and look at what are the accidental habits that you've created, and are those things that you want to continue, like you said, being a slave to or not. And so every month or two, I'll take a step back and be like, all right, what accidental habits have I created? So
That's good.
I don't watch news ever, but that's an interesting accidental habit for a lot of people. You
Mm-hmm.
wake up, you grab the TV, you click on the news, you're feeding all of this, I'm going to call it mostly garbage. Some people will definitely have a different opinion, but that's an accidental habit. And so once that habit is created, it takes a little bit of effort to break that habit. But once you get, 2 or 3 days in without having a couple glasses of wine or watching the news, that habit will start to break, and then you can start to replace it with a better one.
You know what's an accidental habit related to your growth mindset theme? An accidental habit is that we think that we need to hire technicians that are already licensed. An accidental habit is that we think that material prices shouldn't go up, or we get discouraged when they go up. Or an accidental habit is, now that there's this shortage of vehicles in our industry, the vehicles are just not being made, that now we just have to cry instead of just looking for a different type of vehicle or thinking creatively in the solution. I love that term. That's definitely stolen. And I invite everybody to do that exercise because I'm all in on that.
Yeah, look at it. See what are those accidental habits that we're doing that we don't want to be a slave to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's like the perfect way to kind of sum up this entire conversation. Yeah, it's exactly that. Question your habits. Be aware of where you're building momentum and the direction that natural momentum is going to pull you.
Well said.
And make it intentional, right? I mean, that's
Awesome,
what I
man.
got out of this. So
You
that's
have that power.
a very holistic recap here, Stephen. But I'll give you, if you have any specific recaps, feel free to throw those in here, and then Julian will kind of just go over a little bit of information on where people can find you and find more about Nexstar. And yeah, I think this conversation is going to have to continue because there's so much in it.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, man. I mean, to be really honest with you, Davis, I got way too many things to do in a recap. I think that at this point, if you're still listening to this podcast, you are committed to yourself enough that you're going to pull some really amazing things out of this. And I know, at least from my perspective, if you're listening to this, I would just challenge you to take 1 or 2 things that resonated most with you, write them down on a little sticky note, and implement them into your life, and just test them out and see how they feel and see how it works. There were so many good things that came out of this that it's probably the first time we've ever done it. I'm actually not going to do a recap because I think that it's important for people listening to say what resonated with me the most across all of these topics,
Mm-hmm.
and take those 1 or 2 things and just put them into action. You don't have to, you don't have to know what I thought was the most important thing or what I wrote down. Do yourself a favor and pick what resonated for you the most and just try it.
We covered a lot of waterfront. I do want to say quickly, the one note that I took that I didn't share, and I feel compelled, as you said, for the people who have invested this time and listened, a mentor in my life talked about change and the 3 factors that can help you with change. So now you're sitting here going, how do I change? And one is a significant emotional event, which is what I described, what I experienced, or like you say, people wait for, maybe a loved one passes or they get in a car accident. So you have a significant emotional event can trigger change. The second thing is environment. So actually you'll notice that I had this significant emotional event and I had an environment change. So you may need to shift those that you keep close to you. Environment change, it could just be your inner circle. It could be employees. It could be, just think about that. But environment also can help you with change. And then the third thing is conditioning, which is the habits. So you start to create these things, which you'll notice. And I'm not saying this, of course, I have some cognitive bias to this, but and why I believe it deeply as I do, but you'll see that I had all 3. I had this significant emotional event, I changed the environment, and then I had conditioning, meaning I changed my behaviors. I mean, I kept a repetition, a pattern, a habit, and that's all conditioning means. So if it's conditioning that you need to lean into, if it's the environment you need to lean into, so that way you can avoid this significant emotional event being the reason for change. I just wanted to say that I had that note, and I hope that adds value to some people here that are listening as to where do I start? How do I do it?
Yeah.
I love that, man. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, the environment aspect is so important. The people you surround yourself with, the actual locale, like I remember when I first moved to Denver, just really quick here, like a lot of the intention behind that was like, I want to have more healthy habits. And living in Chicago, there's less opportunities to get outside, to do things than like Denver, where that is baked into the culture.
Yeah.
And here I am. I'm now climbing mountains. I had no idea that I would ever be a mountain climber.
Love it.
So, all right, guys. Well, this has been awesome. So for our audience, to find more information on Nexstar, check out nexstarnetwork.com.
Perfect.
Julian, where else? Are you on Facebook or link? Where's a good place if people want to find more about you?
Yep. LinkedIn is the only place you'll find me, gang. I'm not playing around on any other platforms. I don't have time for that. But if you make time for me on LinkedIn, I'll make time for you, and let's have a healthy conversation.
Okay.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That alone is a whole point that I could talk about marketing and social media. Pick one platform that you're good at and resonates with you and drop all of the others. Like people ask all the time, should I be on all of these? I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, let's be mediocre at everything. Well, I love you guys. I thank you. I sincerely appreciate the platform. I thank you for letting it. We talked a lot about self-development here, but I truly wouldn't be here without the platform of Nexstar. I do want to shout out my gang here, my crew. They changed my life. And again, if it's not Nexstar for you, whatever it is, find a healthy environment, find some healthy conditioning or triggers or habits, and hey, take it from a guy who shouldn't even be here that it can be done. So I thank you, and I encourage you, and I appreciate you.
Beautiful, man.
Awesome. Yeah. And thank you, Julian. We're so grateful to have you on and just get a little taste of all of your wisdom. So yeah, amazing. All right. So if you want to continue this conversation, join our Facebook group at Home Service Marketing and Success. You can also find more information at witdelivers.com. All right. Thank you so much for listening and have an awesome rest of your day.